Hello guys, welcome to athletics case study. So same drill as before, you're basically looking at athletics as a popular recreation, a rational recreation, development of athletics through public schools, and then the factors affecting participation in athletics today. Now, the difference between athletics and every other case study is that athletics was different in popular recreation, i.e. it had two forms of pre-industrial athletics as a popular recreation. It was termed, so you had pedestrianism, which was kind of originated from footmen delivering messages to neighbouring villages. So upper class families would have employ a lower class footman who would then run to the neighbouring villages to pass on notes to other rich families. So that's where it originated from. It's important you have that down as soon as you start talking about pedestrianism. Now from that we need to pick and choose the different characteristics from within popular recreation that applied to pedestrianism. So if we're saying that it originated from footmen delivering messages, it then moved on to pedestrianism as an event, so people would try and run certain distances, etc. Now if I was going to try and give you kind of characteristics. First one we'll look at, we'll leave local because they were moving to local neighbouring villages, so that took it out of local slightly. It was uncoded, okay, basic, simple, unwritten rules, okay, so to start with, just taking it from one family to another, and then moving on from there, you're then looking at kind of those basic kind of routes that people would run around it if they were doing it as a running race. Going on from there is irregular, so races happened at kind of village fairs, particularly they happened on holy days, and if you go down to the bottom, it's very much based around kind of wagering, deviance and cheating. I'll come down to that in a minute. Now going on from there, courtly popular. Now both, I mean, lower class would compete for money. It was a job for them. It was kind of, they would go there to try and win, and they would have 1,000 guineas for a win, which, would give them quite a lot of money. So if you go on from there, upper class would take part, but for enjoyment only. This will revisit this in rational recreation. So their job was enjoyment, fitness, and 100% they would not be interested in winning. They were just there for like these kind of amateur ideals. Going on from there, occupational. So yes, it would be occupational for the lower class. So the lower class would be employed by the upper class in kind of the rural patronage. As we talked about before, they would have them there to deliver their messages, but then on the footnote to that, they would then have as they would kind of enter them into races as runners. So going on from there, wagering definitely massively linked to it because it was the lower class were actually competing for money. There was all kinds of deviance that went on as a result of the wagering. As soon as you have wagering, it gives the lower class a chance to go from rags to riches. Now as soon as you have that win ethic in there, people will do anything to win. They'll win at all costs, and in particular, the lower class would would be deviant. So what they would do is they would kind of they would give in false names to the race organisers, and they would act as kind of amateurs, for example, like an upper class amateur, and then they would actually obviously run for money, go against the kind of ethos of what would be an amateur. So going on from there, then. Specific activity points. Now there was a bit of a case study kind of person on there. So you had Captain Robert Barclay Allardyce was his full name. Basically he massively raised the profile of kind of pedestrianism because he was the kind of key kind of a pioneer, and the pioneer in the way that he kind of showcased this kind of concept of going a certain distance in a time. Now, what he did was 1,000 miles in 1,000 hours, and as a result of that, he earned himself 1,000 guineas. Now, obviously, this gave him a lot of money at that time, and kind of it really kind of raised the kind of profile of pedestrianism. So, going on from there, then, if we leave that there, so make sure you understand pedestrianism. Where did it originate from? It started off as footmen delivering messages to neighbouring villages, and then you go through the kind of it then moving into these kind of running races that took place on holy days, occasionally, irregularly, uncoded, basic, simple, unwritten rules, a certain route, and you just follow that route. Nothing complex. Okay, so make sure you can get in 3, 4, 5 component or characteristics of popular recreation linked to pedestrianism, those running races. Going on from there, the next form of athletics as a popular recreation was community events. Now, community events took place at village fairs, hop fairs, and to me, to get this into your head, the most commonly associated kind of village fair or kind of a community event, I suppose, would be the Much Wenlock Games that we talked about last year. So just a nice little mention there that gives you some specific knowledge, as I said before. So going on from there then, Was it local? Okay, yes, it was local. It was only between one village and maybe the neighbouring village only. It was uncoded, basic, simple, unwritten rules. Irregular, so they happened on kind of Easter, like bank holidays, for example. Those would be an annual Easter Monday, for example. Quarterly popular. It was only specifically only for the lower class. Okay, for these kind of village fairs. You know, and I'll go down to that in a minute. So going on, it was certainly rural, not occupational in this case because it was like they were one-off events. Wagering, okay, there was definitely wagering on the outcome of specific events. And then you look at it and say, right, specific activity, what happened at these things? What is the specific knowledge that you have to know? So basically you're looking at this, that at these community events, the kind of things that would happen would be things like smock races. Okay, which is when lower class women would kind of compete in a running race to try and win a smock frock, as it was called, which would be like a dress for a woman because they didn't have no clothes, or they would run for food. On top of that, you'd have pig catching events where people would chase after pigs. Whoever caught the pig first would win a prize. They would have gurning competitions where you pull a funny face and you try to keep that face as long as you can. There was also things such as whistling matches. Okay, so this is ridiculous. You might think, what am I talking about here? But these are things that were in the mark scheme 2 years ago when a question came up on athletics as a popular, or community events as a popular recreation. So really important. You can have 3-4 things that could be linked to kind of these community events, the type of things that happen there. Smock races, pig catching, gurning events, and whistling races, or whistling match between two people. So basically that is your kind of specific stuff on community events. You can see the difference being with this, you know, one's a lot more about kind of like what we would see as kind of a sports day type thing, but old school. Okay, the other one is kind of a running race. Okay, a solely running race that was based around this kind of pedestrianism, or footmen, sorry, carrying messages. So going on from there, then we need to then have a look at athletics as a rational recreation. So how did it change? So you can already see the lower class were kind of trying to kind of muddle this kind of amateur idea that they were entering races as amateurs, which was then allowing them to have an unfair handicap, giving them an advantage. So what we're going to look then is, how did athletics change? What happened? How did it become the sport as we know it today? The first parts of this can be linked to rational recreation. So starting off then, first thing we need to look at, rational recreation, it became regional. Okay, so the formation of the railways, as in everything else, allowed spectatorism in athletics events. So you had up to 25,000 people going to watch athletic events at different kind of stadiums, which we'll look at later. And because of this, what happened is you started to have, because you could get these kind of people moving across the country, you even started to get people coming across on the boat from America, because they knew then they could tour around the UK doing different kind of athletics or running events. And this led to kind of like the case study kind of person known as Deerfoot, who was a kind of a celebrity runner, who basically came over from America, like I said, and kind of competed at these different events where there would be, big crowds to watch them. Now going on from there, uncoded. So, sorry, from uncoded, it became coded. So this is a massively important point. If ever there's a triple star, it's this one. This is where you need to make sure you understand it. So the formation, as a result of the improved business and administration skills from the ex-public school boys, they started to form clubs, as they did with the FA, etc. Now this was very, very important, because Amateur Athletics Club was the first recognised organisational body, or national governing body, formed. Now, it was formed by the public school boys, and it was formed on the premise that no lower class person could take part in any amateur athletics club events. And this was based around the fact that they did not want, the gentlemen amateurs, did not want to be kind of linked with lower class people who were trying to win. They wanted to take part for fun, for enjoyment, for intrinsic values. So it basically brought up something called the exclusion clause. Now you might have heard about this, Carl might have mentioned it soon, which basically said that no person who is professional, who is trying to win, can take part in any amateur athletics club event. So as a result of this, we then need to start to think about, now, do you think this carried on? Of course not. So what happened was, there was this exclusion clause was removed. So basically, as you look down here, it was lifted, and a new organisational body came up, and this was called the Amateur Athletics Association. So the Amateur Athletic Association opened up competition to all classes. and it basically said that they could compete, but they had to compete as what they were. So, for example, if you were lower class, you had to compete as a professional, or if you were a professional, sorry, you had to compete as that, and you had to kind of say that you were a professional, and you would have your own race. And whereas you'd have the upper class and the middle class, they would compete as gentlemen amateurs, and they would have a separate race, okay? But they would still be allowed to all compete, all right? Or they would compete for separate ideals, I suppose. So you can see here, just have a read and get a key understanding of the key bits there. So, going down from here then, irregular, okay, it went from irregular in pre-industrial times, for example, community events, pedestrian races on holy days, to now being regular. So what we had now is kind of the Saturday Half-Day Act and reduced factory hours. It gave more time, people more time to watch athletics and take part in athletics. But perhaps most important is that kind of there was a focus now, like a move to kind of Sunday athletics meetings. Now, Sunday became the day for athletics. So this was kind of these reduced hours, and also the fact that you had Saturday half day didn't mean you had to compete on the Saturday half day, but it just meant people could have a little bit of leisure and relaxation time on the Saturday afternoon, as opposed to the Sunday. So that meant that they could do the athletics meetings on a Sunday. So that's quite an important thing there. Going on, last couple, it went from rural to urban, so urbanisation and mass migration to the cities, and led to the kind of development of purpose-built athletics tracks. So we talked about before, kind of, initially kind of swimming pools lead into this kind of, I don't know, almost acting as a catalyst to kind of purpose-built facilities. So athletics tracks were built, stadiums, okay, which allow people to watch, as we said earlier, the 25,000 people watching it. And then finally, wagering, okay, widespread when it came to athletics. And then again, this continued kind of deviance via the disguise of form was still prevalent in athletics as a rational recreation. Okay, there's your keynote. So you make notes on popular recreation times 2, rational recreation. Tomorrow's lesson, we'll recap that and move on to public schools, the 3 stages, and then we'll look at how the factors that affect participation in athletics today. Thank you.